Hello and welcome. This is General Knowledge Series and topic for today is Revolt of 1857. This revolt was hailed as the first war of Indian independence by Vinayak Damodar Savarkar because according to him this was the first time Indians got united and fought against British East India Company. So let us try to understand the situation of India, the political and economic situation of India of that time that had led Indians to rise up and revolt against British rule. British East India Company got its first major victory in India in the battlefields of Plassey in 1757. Now please note that this was exactly a century before the revolt of 1857, and what has happened in these 100 years has left native Indian population completely dissatisfied and discontented. Let us try to understand what are some of the reasons that Indians were angry about British rule. Contrary to popular belief, the Mangal Pandey episode or the greased bullet episode was not the primary reason of this discontentment. Yes, that was an important reason, but there were several other reasons. All of these reasons compiled and gave a sufficient discontentment to Indian population, and they rose up in revolt against British rule. One of the chief reasons of Indian anger against British was British economic policies. British completely destroyed domestic Indian industries. Indian manufacturing and trade was completely decimated. Traditional handicrafts were ruined. Agriculture was completely destroyed. Land revenues were kept very high and farmers were forced into indigo cultivation, which was detrimental to their land also. This resulted in mass poverty in India. In fact, the plight of Indian population under British rule was very brilliantly highlighted by Dada Bhai Naoroji through his theory of drain of wealth. During the initial phase of British Raj, Indian kings, Nawabs and ruling chiefs were in fact in favor of British rule because British were friendly to them. They did not interfere in their internal matters. They let them be the kings of their own territories and rule as they please. But after the very aggressive annexation policy adopted by some of the British governor generals, especially Lord Wellesley and Lord Dalhousie, lot of Indian kings they lost their territories, and this turned them against British rule. Lord Dalhousie used policy of annexation and doctrine of Lapse as an excuse to annex lot of Indian territories. He adopted this policy, he applied this policy and took away the lands of lot of Indian kings, including the Rani of Jhansi, Laxmibai. And this is how Laxmibai got involved in revolt of 1857. Another major reason that had given lot of heartburn to Indians was the way we were treated by our colonial masters. British maintained a policy of racial superiority and racial discriminations against Indians. They never used to freely intermix with Indian population. They always maintained a social distance from Indians. In fact, during British Raj, outside the prestigious British Club used to hang a signboard stating dogs and Indians not allowed inside. This generated a feeling of alienation among Indian population. We were made to feel inferior. We were only given menial, lowly jobs. Indians were not appointed to high offices. They were kept reserved only for Europeans. In all this generated a feeling in Indian mind that this was a foreign rule. Indians never fully identified with the British rule. And in that sense, British rule is different from Mughal rule. Because yes, Mughals also came from outside, but they so completely mixed with Indian population that people started accepting them as their own, which was not a case in British rule. So in this background of prevailing mistrust, even the noble British attempts to introduce reforms in Indian society were viewed by Indian population with lot of suspicion. So for example, when in 1829, Lord William Bentinck abolished tradition of Sati, and when he made female infanticide illegal, though these reforms were very well intentioned, but Indian population took it as an attempt to interfere in Indian religion and Indian culture, and even these well-intentioned British reforms backfired. So these economic, political and social causes filled Indian minds with lot of discontent. Dissatisfaction against British rule was widespread in the society, and all it was required was an event to spark the anger. And that spark, that detonation was provided by two events in 1856. One was the annexation of the state of Awadh by Lord Dalhousie in 1856, and another the Mangal Pandey episode in 1857. So these two became the immediate causes of revolt of 1857, and interestingly, both these events have been made into popular Bollywood movies. Uh, Annexation of Awadh was the subject matter of a very popular movie by iconic Indian film director Satyajit Ray. He made a movie by the name Shatranj Ke Khiladi on this, and Amir Khan acted in a Ketan Mehta directed Mangal Pandey The Rising, which is based on 1857's revolt. The day was 29th March 1857. The place was Barakpur in modern day West Bengal, and Mangal Pandey became the chief protagonist of that event. You must be aware that how British introduced a new type of rifle in Indian Army back then. In this rifle, prior to loading a bullet in barrel, it has to be peeled from the mouth. And somehow this rumor got spread among the sepoys that the bullet has a grease in that which contains animal fat. For obvious reasons, both Muslims as well as Hindu soldiers became very angry, and they refused to use that bullet. The date was 29th March 1857. The place was Barakpur in modern day West Bengal. Mangal Pandey became the chief protagonist. Mangal Pandey, who was an upper caste Brahmin from Kanpur, he refused to use that bullet, and when he was forced, he shot dead his British officer. Consequently, Mangal Pandey was captured and he was hanged on 8th of April 1857. When this news of Mangal Pandey's death reached Meerut cantonment, even their soldiers refused to use that bullet. 85 of those soldiers were imprisoned, their battalion was disbanded, and this is how, on 10th May 1857, soldiers in Meerut cantonment, they broke out in open rebellion. They killed their British officers, they looted the armory, they freed their fellow soldiers who were imprisoned by British, and then they started their march towards Delhi. Delhi was traditionally the capital of Mughal India. Rebels reached Delhi on 12th May 1857. Delhi at that time was ruled by Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar. Rebels requested them to be the head of rebel, and very unwillingly Bahadur Shah Zafar accepted to become their leader. Soon the rebellion spread through other cities in northern and central India like Kanpur, Jhansi, Banaras, Lucknow and Delhi. And as a student of history, you must remember the names of these cities and the leaders who led this revolt in these cities. Let me give you a list of these leaders. In Delhi, the command was nominally in the hands of Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar. However, the real power in Delhi lied with General Bakht Khan. In Kanpur, the rebellion was led by Nana Sahib. Nana Sahib was the adopted son of last Peshwa, and he became the leader of revolt in Kanpur along with two of his commanders, Tatya Tope and Azimullah Khan. In Bihar, a discontented zamindar named Kunwar Singh became the leader of this revolt. In Jhansi, the command was in the hands of Rani Laxmibai, and in Lucknow, Begum Hazrat Mahal was the leader of this revolt. Laxmibai, in fact, was one of the most capable of all the commanders that I have just named, and she has become the part of folklores in India. The revolt, which started in May 1857, practically died in June 1858. British used all their might to suppress this revolt. In this process, they were helped by railways and telegram, which was introduced a couple of years ago in India. One of the major deficiency was that rebels have no definite plan of action. There was no central command authority. In fact, there was no unity of purpose also, because most of these leaders like Laxmibai, Kunwar Singh, Nana Sahib, they were fighting for their own personal grudges that they held against British Empire. So there was no single purpose for which all of them were fighting, and this reflected in lack of coordination and unity also. This became one of the chief reasons that when British came out to suppress this revolt, they did not find it very difficult. British were successful in suppressing this revolt in Kanpur by July 1857. Delhi was recaptured by September 1857. In Bihar, Kunwar Singh was killed by April 1858, and the fate of this revolt was completely sealed when in 20th June 1858, Laxmibai was killed in Battle of Gwalior. Though the stray incidences continued till 1860, but by June 1858 it became clear that this revolt has failed. Though this revolt failed to achieve its objective, but this revolt cannot be termed as a total failure because certain very significant impacts came out as an outcome of this revolt. Laxmibai was killed in June 1858 and British got the total control of India back by 1859. Though this revolt failed to achieve its objective of ousting British from India, but this cannot be termed a total failure in the sense that certain very important and far-reaching changes resulted from revolt of 1857. One important change that came was in the way India was administered by British Empire. Till this date, India was ruled by a British company called British East India Company, and after 1857, East India Company was abolished. British Empire took the direct control of India and company rule was converted into crown rule. That means that East India Company's rule was transferred to British Crown. British Cabinet took the direct responsibility of managing the affairs of India. Government of India Act 1858 was passed and Indian Empire was transferred from East India Company to British Crown. This is regarded as abolition of company rule and beginning of crown rule in India. The responsibility of managing Indian affairs is now shifted from Board of Control of East India Company to British Cabinet. A separate minister was appointed in British Cabinet to handle Indian affairs. Lord Stanley became the first India minister in British Cabinet. Along with that, the title of Governor General of India was also elevated and he was also given the title of Viceroy. Revolt of 1857 is also significant in the sense that this was the beginning of feeling of nationalism in India. This was end of an era and beginning of next era in Indian history. That era which is completely dominated by an event which we call Indian freedom struggle. Some of the popular characters from Revolt of 1857 like Laxmibai became the centerpiece of folklores in India and she inspired the generations of freedom fighters to come. And in that sense, Revolt of 1857 has sown the seeds of nationalism. In fact, it set a ball rolling which ultimately resulted in freedom of India in 1947. We shall talk about that phase of Indian independence in one of our next lecture. Till then, goodbye.